Hi there, and welcome to Studio SN, your place for card making, rubber stamping, and paper crafting tutorials. My name is Sara Naumann, and I'm so very glad you're here. Today I want to show you a fun and easy way to get a multicolored background accented with a little bit of gold embossing. So you can see here on my card I've got three very distinct areas of beautiful ink color. Each one has been accented with a little bit of gold embossing. Now, the three different ink colors that you see on here actually come from one ink pad, and that is from Hero. It's their Ombre ink pads. And then I've used a tool from Wow Embossing to create some lines in between here. It's a really easy process to do, so let's take a look. I'm going to bring in a piece of plain white smooth cardstock and my Hero Ombre ink. And this is the pink to red ombre ink pad. This is a dye-based ink pad, and the ink pad is different from other ink pads because it's actually consisting of three separate pads in here. So we're ranging from, as the name suggests, from light pink to medium to dark. Now you can brayer on this, you can stamp with it. My favorite way to use it is just as easy as this. Just turn it over and place it right onto your cardstock and give a firm but gentle amount of pressure on here. And I'm just kind of sliding my fingers along to make sure that I've got all the areas of that beautiful ink pad. Lift straight up and you've got some really cool stripes of color. I absolutely love this. I think it gives a really fun abstract background. Now you could leave this as it is, or you could add a little bit of heat embossing, which is what I want to do. Now it's important for this next step that you let the ink dry completely. You could heat this with a heat tool to speed up that dry time, or you can let it air dry, which is what I did. And I've got a piece here that is already completely dry. Because that ink is a dye-based ink, it will dry fairly quickly, but I really wanted you to be able to see how easy this is and how beautiful without actually having to wait or use a heat tool. And the second step of the process is going to be adding some embossing powder. And to do that, I'm going to be using the Wow Embossing Freestyle Tool. Now, this is a practical tool and a fun tool, and the reason that it's practical is that it is actually the refill for your Wow Embossing ink pad. So this is the ink pad refill. You would simply roll the ball onto your embossing ink pad, and that will refresh it, so you don't have to buy a new one. Now the other thing though is you can see you've got a really cool ball applicator on here, which means that you can use it for background techniques. It's different from, say, an embossing pen, which is going to have a really fine tip. So you can see the difference in the tip between this and the rolling ball, between the Freestyle tool. So all you need to do with a Freestyle tool is draw with it. And you could use a ruler along with this if you wanted to. I'm just going to freehand my stripes on here. I'm going back and forth. I want it to have a bit of a scuffy effect. I know it's virtually impossible to see this, but you will see it when I add my embossing powder. So I've scribbled that on there, and then I'm going to get a piece of scrap paper. Got one folded here. This is going to be my embossing powder catcher. And I'm using the metallic gold rich pale superfine for this. And I'm just going to sprinkle it on here. And then tap off the excess, and you can see my cool stripey scribbly lines on here. Now what I want to do is make sure I don't have any stray granules in here. You can use a dry paintbrush if you want to sort of scuffle away any of those extra little bits that you might have. That's why you do want to make sure that that ink is completely dry before adding embossing powder on top of it. So what I'm going to do is put my embossing powder back in the jar, heat set this, and come back and show you the rest. So now that my embossing powder has melted, I've got these really beautiful shiny raised stripes of metallic color, perfectly accenting my ombre ink pad background. Now this is a lot of fun to use just as it is, as I've done in my original card. You can of course turn it to either way. You can die cut this, you can cut it into strips. There's a lot that you can do. I wanted to show you one other piece that I've done, and I haven't created a card with this yet, but I just wanted to show you the background. This is using the same technique, only with the green ombre ink pad. And in this case, I simply pressed a repeating background. So I turned it upside down, pressed the ink, and then continued the pattern by pressing again a second time. Now, I've also accented this with embossing powder, but not a metallic. In this case, I used the Luscious Lime, which has been a lot of fun. So this combines really nicely to give me a completely different look. So I wanted to share that with you as well. So let me bring back in the original card one more time. We can take a look. I've just simply mounted that background up onto some coordinating cardstock. I added a little stamped and embossed sentiment here. This is also from Hero, and this is the New Day Butterflies collection. So along with really fun butterfly images, you've also got some nice sentiments in there too, which is what I used. Accented just with a couple of sequins and a bow. It's such a simple way to get a great colorful background, and that embossing is a really nice accent piece on there as well. Thank you so much for joining me today on Studio SN. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to Studio SN on YouTube, and I'll keep you updated with the very latest stamping and card making videos. In the meantime, please feel free to stop by my website, saranaumann.com, for more paper crafting ideas. Thanks again, and I will see you next week.